My name is Adrian, and for the first 17 years of my life, the world made one mistake over and over again. It looked down on me, sometimes literally. I was 5'5" on a generous morning, 5'4¾ if the measuring tape was feeling honest. At school, people treated height like it was a personality. The loudest guys walked through the halls as if being able to reach the top shelf made them emperors. The basketball team took up an entire lunch table, and Caleb, their star player, had the annoying habit of resting his elbow on my shoulder whenever he wanted to laugh. Caleb was 6'6", broad, athletic, and convinced that God had personally appointed him to make short jokes. I never got angry. Anger is what people use when they do not have a plan. I smiled. I memorized, and I waited for useful information. The first centimeter arrived on a Tuesday. I woke up, walked into the bathroom, and hit my forehead on a shelf that had never bothered me before. It was not dramatic. No thunder, no glowing blue screen, no mysterious voice, just a dull little knock against cheap wood. I stared at the shelf. Then I stared at myself. My sleeves looked slightly shorter. At first I assumed I had slept badly and was standing straighter. Then I measured myself. 5'5" and a little more. That was enough to make me pause. I measured again. Then I found the pencil mark on the wall from the previous month. I was exactly 1 centimeter taller. Late growth spurt, I thought. Interesting. The second centimeter arrived the next midnight. I know that because I stayed awake for it. At 11:59 p.m., I stood barefoot against the wall with a measuring tape taped vertically beside me. I had drawn a line across the mirror at the height of my hair. The digital clock changed. 12 o'clock. For about 3 seconds, nothing happened. Then the room shifted. No pain, no stretching sensation, no cracking bones. My point of view simply rose. The line on the mirror slid downward. 1 centimeter. Exactly. I stared at my hands. They were slightly larger. My feet were slightly longer. My shirt tightened by an almost invisible amount. That was not a growth spurt. That was a rule, and rules could be used. Most people, if they suddenly grew 1 centimeter every midnight, would scream. They would call their parents. They would search the internet for miracle diseases and post blurry photos asking strangers for advice. I opened a spreadsheet. Day 1, plus 1 centimeter. Day 2, plus 1 centimeter. Projected day 30, plus 30 centimeters. Projected day 100, plus 1 meter. Projected day 365, plus 3 meters and 65 centimeters. I looked at the final number for a long time. Then I laughed so quietly that no one in the house heard me. The world had spent 17 years looking down on me. In 1 year, that problem would solve itself. The question was not whether I would become tall. The question was what I could become before everyone realized I was never going to stop. For the first 2 weeks, I told no one. I needed data. Every midnight 1 centimeter. Running, sleeping, sitting, standing, eating, fasting, none of it mattered. I tried taking a nap through midnight. I still grew. I tried standing on 1 foot. I still grew. I tried hanging from a pull-up bar because I wanted to know if gravity changed anything. I still grew, and afterward I had to explain why the bar had torn out of the doorway. My proportions remained identical. That was the strangest part. My hands did not become freakishly large. My head did not stay the same size. My bones, muscles, organs, and even my teeth scaled with the rest of me. Old clothes became too small as if I had been resized in perfect percentages. I ran faster because my stride length increased. I jumped farther because my legs were longer. My strength increased too. At first the difference was small. Then I noticed I could lift the corner of my bed with 1 hand. A week later, I could lift the whole bed. I began writing down everything. Height, weight, reach, grip strength, vertical jump, running speed. How many stairs I could take in 1 step. How far away I could steal Caleb's pencil without leaving my chair. That last measurement became surprisingly useful. 3 weeks after the growth started, Caleb rested his elbow on my shoulder at lunch. Or at least, he tried. His elbow landed higher than he expected. He looked at me. I looked at him. He frowned. "Did you get taller?" I smiled. "Maybe you're shrinking." The table laughed at him. It was a small victory. Small victories are useful because they teach people to underestimate how much you enjoy winning. By the end of the first month, I had grown almost a foot. There was no hiding it anymore. Teachers stared. Students stared. The school nurse measured me 3 times, and then accused the measuring rod of being broken. I let everyone believe what they wanted. A late growth spurt, a medical miracle, a bad measuring tape. I even slouched for a few days to slow down the rumors. That was when Dr. Owen entered my life. He was the first person who looked at the measurements and did not say, "Wow." He said, "Again." That made me like him immediately. Dr. Owen was not old, but he had the tired expression of a man who had spent too many years listening to people lie about how much soda they drank. He measured my arms, legs, spine, lungs, heart, blood, bone density, reaction time, and probably my patience. Then he repeated everything. Then he stared at the results. "You're healthy," he said. "Good. No, you don't understand. You're not just healthy. Every measurement looks normal for your current size. Also good. You grew 28 centimeters in 28 days. I tilted my head. 29. Your first reading was in the afternoon. He stared at me. That was the moment he realized I had better records than he did. I could see it on his face. Good. People became much easier to manage once they understood that I was paying attention. Dr. Owen asked if I knew when the growth happened. I said I wasn't sure. That was my first important lie. I did not lie because I distrusted him. I lied because information has value, and only idiots give away valuables for free. If the entire world knew I grew exactly 1 centimeter at midnight, every camera would wait for midnight. Every scientist would design tests around midnight. Every reporter would build a countdown around midnight. I preferred uncertainty. Uncertainty made other people react. I wanted to be the one preparing. So I created 3 fake theories. I told one student that I grew faster after eating eggs. I told another that I had started taking ice-cold showers. I let someone overhear me joking about a secret stretching routine. By the next Monday, half the school was eating eggs, freezing in showers, and hanging upside down from door frames. Caleb showed up with 6 hard-boiled eggs in his lunch. I almost felt bad. Almost. 2 months after the first centimeter, I passed 6 feet. The school reacted as if I had crossed an international border. People who had ignored me suddenly asked if I played basketball. Girls who had called me cute in a little brother way started using completely different sentences. Teachers stopped asking me to sit in the front because I blocked the whiteboard. And Caleb stopped using my shoulder as furniture. That should have been enough. For a normal person, it might have been. But I had already calculated day 365. 6 feet was not the finish line. It was the loading screen. The basketball coach approached me after gym class. He did not even pretend it was about talent. "We could use your height." I looked at the gym. Then I looked at Caleb, who was practicing dunks. He noticed me watching and smirked. I could have joined immediately. That would have been boring. "I've never played seriously," I said. The coach said they could teach me. I nodded as if I were uncertain. Inside, I was arranging the next 6 weeks. Caleb's identity depended on being the tallest, most spectacular athlete in the building, so I did not challenge him. I complimented him. I asked him for tips. I missed shots on purpose. I learned every defensive habit he had. I learned that he always took 1 extra dribble before driving left. I learned that he jumped early when someone pump faked from the corner. I learned that when he was angry, he tried to solve everything with speed. And every night, I became 1 centimeter harder to guard. By the time our first public scrimmage arrived, I was 6'3". Caleb still believed I was the awkward tall kid he had been teaching. The gym was full because someone had posted a video of me touching the rim flat-footed. I had not told them I could already dunk. The first play started. Caleb took the ball. I backed up. He grinned. Then he drove left. 1 extra dribble. Exactly as expected. I stepped across. He rose for a layup. I did not jump. I reached up and caught the ball out of the air with 1 hand. Not blocked. Caught. The gym made a noise like somebody had dropped a piano. Caleb landed and stared at me. I handed him the ball. "Sorry," I said. Then I smiled. He knew I was not sorry. On the next possession, I took the ball near half court. The coach shouted for me to pass. Caleb backed away, daring me to shoot. I had practiced this exact angle for 12 days. I took 2 long steps and launched myself. I did not jump from the free throw line. That would have been impressive. I jumped from behind it. For one floating second, I saw everyone tilt their heads upward. Then I slammed the ball through the rim hard enough to make the backboard shake. I hung there for just long enough to look down at Caleb. Not because I needed to, because theater matters. The clip hit 10 million views in 2 days. That was when Lena contacted me. Lena did not introduce herself like a fan. She sent me a message with a graph. 37 public photos of me from the past 2 months, each matched to an object of known size. She had estimated my height on every date. The dots formed a line. A very straight line. Her message contained one sentence. You are growing at a fixed rate. I read it twice. Then I smiled. Finally, someone interesting. Lena was my age and ran a small video channel that specialized in solving ridiculous internet mysteries. Most of her videos were about edited stunts, fake hauntings, or people pretending to own exotic animals. She had 200,000 followers. Not huge. But she had something more useful than followers. She was observant. I replied with a single question. What rate? She answered, I think 1 centimeter per day. I did not respond for 6 hours. That was deliberate. During those 6 hours, I checked everything about her public work. She did not lie often. She liked proving people wrong. She enjoyed puzzles more than popularity. And most importantly, she hated being manipulated. That meant I knew exactly how to manipulate her. I called her. She answered immediately. I told her she was close. Not correct. Close. That irritated her. Then I offered a deal that did not sound like a deal. She could film a controlled measurement once a week. No midnight footage. No medical records. No private tests. In exchange, she would get first access to every insane stunt I planned. She asked why I would agree. I told her the truth. Because if people are going to investigate me, I would rather choose the smartest one. Silence. Compliments are weak when they are obvious. They are powerful when they sound like analysis. She agreed. 3 days later, Lena filmed me dunking over a parked car. I had suggested a bicycle. She suggested a car. I upgraded the plan to a moving car. The driver crawled forward at walking speed, but the camera angle made it look much faster. I cleared the hood, caught a basketball thrown from behind me, switched hands in the air and dunked backward. The clip reached 30 million views. Lena's channel exploded. My follower count exploded, and Caleb became furious. Perfect. A jealous rival is one of the easiest people in the world to predict. Caleb challenged me publicly to a one-on-one game. He posted a video saying I was a circus giraffe who could only do stunts. I watched it with Lena. She looked at me. You know he's trying to bait you. Of course. So you're going to ignore him? Of course not. I accepted within 30 seconds. Then I spent the next week pretending to train badly in public. I posted missed jump shots. I posted clips of myself tripping over my longer feet. I let Caleb hear that I was having trouble with my balance. Every night, I grew another centimeter. Every morning, I practiced alone before sunrise. My changing body had one disadvantage: timing. A move that worked perfectly on Monday felt slightly different on Friday. My center of mass rose, my stride length changed, my reach extended. So I built my style around things that improved as I grew. Long steps, high releases, one-handed catches, no wasted movement. Caleb trained to beat a 6'4" version of me. On game day, I was 6'5". That 1 centimeter mattered. People love to say talent decides everything. That is comforting. It means they do not have to admit preparation is cruel. The court had temporary bleachers. Hundreds of students packed around it. Thousands watched Lena's live stream. 1st to 11. Caleb scored the first 3 points. I let him. He laughed after the third. The chat flooded with messages saying I had been exposed. I could almost hear strangers feeling smart. Then I stopped missing. Caleb drove right. I took 1 step and blocked him against the backboard. He tried a fadeaway. I waited until the ball left his fingers, then snatched it with my left hand. He backed up to prevent the drive. I shot over him. He crowded me. I stepped around him. At 8-3, he stopped joking. At 10-3, he stopped looking at the crowd. Match point. I could have ended it with a normal dunk. Instead, I dribbled backward, past the 3-point line, past the volleyball markings, nearly to half court. Caleb shouted, "No way." I wanted him to say that. I wanted everyone to hear it. I ran forward. 1 step, 2, 3. I planted so far from the basket that the entire crowd leaned in at the same time. Then I flew. My fingers barely reached the rim. Barely was enough. I hammered the ball down, swung under the basket, and landed facing Caleb. 11-3. The gym erupted. I walked over to him and held out my hand. He stared at it. I knew exactly what he was thinking. If he refused, he looked bitter. If he accepted, he acknowledged the loss. I had given him 2 choices and designed both of them. He shook my hand. "Rematch when you stop growing," he muttered. I smiled. That might be a long wait. That sentence became the title of every video the next morning. And that was when the money started. A clothing company wanted me. Then a shoe company. Then an energy drink. Then a mattress brand, because apparently the sight of me hanging off the end of a normal bed was considered excellent advertising. At first, the companies treated me like a novelty. That lasted 1 meeting. I walked into every room knowing more about their audience numbers than the people trying to hire me. I knew which of my clips performed best with teenagers, parents, athletes, and international viewers. I knew how many people searched my name after each appearance. I knew that basketball made me look talented, but ordinary people preferred videos where I used my height to solve stupid problems. Changing a ceiling light bulb without a ladder got more views than a difficult dunk. Reaching through a second-floor apartment balcony to retrieve a locked-out man's keys got even more. So I stopped selling height. I sold moments. I appeared in an advertisement where a family could not get a cat out of a tree. I walked into frame, picked up the entire tree branch with one hand, waited for the cat to step onto my shoulder, and then looked into the camera like nothing had happened. The branch was reinforced. The cat was calm. The family were actors. The internet did not care. My favorite advertisement involved a fast food drive-thru. I was too tall to fit comfortably inside the car, so I simply stood in the drive-thru lane, leaned down to the window, and ordered like I was a vehicle. The employee handed me a giant paper bag. I walked away making engine noises under my breath. People copied it for weeks. Ridiculous? Yes. Profitable? Extremely. By month 4, I was over 7 feet tall. That was when normal fame stopped being enough. At 7 feet, I could not enter a room quietly. Every doorway became a negotiation. Every chair looked decorative. Every group photo looked like I had been pasted in from another image. I could either become uncomfortable in public, or make everyone else feel like the world had been built incorrectly. I chose the second option. I started arriving at events through loading doors. Not because I had to, because it looked better. I wore custom coats that moved behind me like capes. I stepped over velvet ropes instead of walking around them. When photographers shouted for me to move back, I moved closer and crouched until my face filled every camera. When a late-night host joked that I was too big for the couch, I picked up the couch, turned it sideways, and sat on the floor with the host still on it. That clip did 40 million views. Lena called it controlled nonsense. I called it brand development. Doctor. Owen called me before every major stunt and reminded me that being healthy did not make me indestructible. I told him I understood. Then I asked if my shoulder could safely support a grown man during a running jump. He was quiet for a long time. Why? No reason. The next day, I performed a dunk with Caleb sitting on my shoulder. That was not the original plan. Originally, Caleb was supposed to stand under the basket while I jumped over him, but he refused. He said it made him look small. At the time, I was 7'2". He was correct. So I gave him a better option. Then come with me. He laughed. I did not. 10 minutes later, he was sitting on my shoulder, gripping my head, while Lena tried not to drop the camera. We ran from the corner. I took off. Caleb shouted something I am not allowed to repeat in most advertisements. I dunked with one hand. He slapped the backboard on the way past. The clip was perfect. After that, Caleb stopped being just my rival. He became my measuring stick. Every few weeks, we recreated the same photo with our shoulders touching. At first, he was taller. Then we were equal. Then I passed him. Then my shoulder rose above his head. People loved the progression. Caleb pretended to hate it. I pretended not to enjoy that. Lena never believed either of us. The 3 of us became a kind of traveling circus, except the circus had millions of followers, and one of the tents was my shirt. That was when Grant noticed me. Grant was not famous for doing one thing. He was famous for putting his face on everything. He owned an entertainment company, a sports streaming platform. 2 giant indoor theme parks, a chain of luxury gyms, and enough giant screens around the country that avoiding him required living underground. Grant loved spectacle. More importantly, he loved being the person who owned the spectacle. He invited me to appear at one of his parks. The offer was ridiculous: a huge live event, basketball, obstacle courses, photo sessions, a custom giant meal, a stunt where I would supposedly race an animatronic dinosaur. Lena read the invitation twice. He wants to turn you into a mascot. I know. Caleb frowned. So don't go. I looked at the promotional render. It showed a giant cartoon version of me standing beside Grant. The cartoon version of me was smiling and waving. Grant's cartoon was standing on my shoulder. That was the part I disliked. I'll go. Lena looked suspicious. Why? Because he thinks the event is about my height. It is. No, it's about his park. I leaned back in my reinforced chair. By the end, it will be about me. Grant's park looked like someone had given a child unlimited money and then refused to supervise him. There was a fake volcano, a 3-story arcade, an indoor roller coaster, a pirate ship restaurant, a robot dragon, and, because apparently normal fountains were no longer exciting enough, a fountain that shot water 40 feet into the air while music played. Grant greeted me in front of a wall of cameras. He was charming. Very charming. That was useful. Charming people are dangerous because everyone wants to believe they are kind. Grant shook my hand with both of his. Adrian, welcome. You're even bigger in person. I get that a lot, he laughed. Then he pointed to an enormous banner with my face on it. His logo was larger. I noticed. Of course I noticed. The first event was a basketball exhibition. Easy. The second was a vertical reach challenge against a robotic arm. Interesting. The third was the animatronic dinosaur race. Stupid. I loved it, but Grant had designed the day carefully. Every event placed his brand beside me. Every camera angle included his logo. Every announcer repeated his name. He was not using me as a guest. He was trying to convert my fame into an advertisement for himself. So I adjusted. During the basketball exhibition, I did not wear the jersey they gave me. I wore my own. During the reach challenge, I asked the crowd to guess whether I could touch the robot's highest target. They chanted my name, not Grant's. During the dinosaur race, I waited until the animatronic beast was halfway down the track. Then I stopped running. The crowd gasped. The dinosaur kept moving. I turned around, jogged backward, and let it catch up. Then, just before the finish, I reached sideways, grabbed the padded decorative tail, and crossed the line while dragging the dinosaur behind me. The machine was designed to roll freely in an emergency. Grant did not know I knew that. Lena did. She had found the safety footage online. The dinosaur's feet skidded dramatically. The crowd lost its mind. Someone turned the moment into a meme before I reached the backstage area. Grant was still smiling when he met me, but it was a different smile. Good. Now we understood each other. You like improvising, he said. I like improving. Same thing, sometimes. Not really. That was the first move. The second came during the giant meal. They brought out a hamburger the size of a car tire. The plan was for me to pose with it. Grant walked beside me as the cameras rolled. Think you can finish it? I looked at the burger, then at him, then at the crowd. No. The announcer laughed. Grant looked surprised. I picked up the burger with both hands. But I think we can. I tore it into pieces and handed them to the crowd. Suddenly, hundreds of people were holding chunks of Grant's carefully staged prop meal. His camera shot became chaos. My camera shot became a party. Lena climbed onto a table to film from above. Caleb started throwing fries like confetti. Within minutes, the neat sponsored presentation had turned into an enormous, ridiculous picnic centered around me. Grant could not stop it without looking miserable. He joined in. Of course he did. Smart. I respected that. That night, Grant found me near the empty fountain. The park had closed. For once, there were no cameras. He looked up at me. By then, almost everyone looked up at me. You're good, he said. I know. Most people become uncomfortable when you agree with compliments. Grant did not. You understand attention. So do you. I built an empire out of it. I crouched slightly so we were closer to eye level. Then you understand why I won't let anyone borrow mine for free." He laughed. "I like you. I know." That time he laughed harder. Then he offered to make me the face of an entire series of giant events. I said I would think about it. I already knew my answer. No, not because the opportunity was bad, because the timing was bad. I was still growing. Every day my body changed. Every week the old stunt became physically easier and visually smaller. Why lock myself into anyone else's imagination when mine had not reached the ceiling yet, especially when I was getting close to reaching actual ceilings? At 7'8", I discovered the first truly annoying problem with becoming gigantic. Showers. Standard shower heads sprayed me in the chest. Mirrors ended around my neck. Beds became horizontal suggestions. Airplane seats were comedy props. I could not sit normally in most cars. For 2 days, the internet mocked photos of me folding myself into the back seat of a sedan. On the 3rd day, I turned it into a challenge. Lena filmed me attempting to fit into increasingly tiny vehicles. Large SUV, pickup truck, compact car, tiny electric car. Children's battery-powered Jeep. I failed the last one because my knees were above the plastic windshield. Then I picked it up with one hand, tucked it under my arm, and walked away. The video became my most watched clip that month. That was the secret I learned early. If the world found something humiliating, I turned it into content before anyone else could. Too tall for a doorway? I made a doorway limbo challenge. Too heavy for a chair? I rated chairs by how many seconds they survived. Shoes too large to buy in stores? I invited designers to compete to make the most ridiculous pair. One company sent me sneakers with built-in lights. Another sent boots that looked like monster feet. Caleb sent me clown shoes. I wore the clown shoes to a basketball shoot and dunked in them. Then I mailed them back to him. He displayed them in his room. He denied this for months. My height stopped being a problem because I refused to treat it like one. Every inconvenience became a stage. Every stage became attention. Every bit of attention became leverage. And every midnight, the lever got longer. At 8 feet tall, Dr. Owen stopped pretending his office could handle me. We moved my checkups to a rehabilitation gym with extra high equipment. Even there, the blood pressure cuff had to be custom made. He listened to my chest with a stethoscope while standing on a step stool. "Your heart is normal," he said. "For 8 feet? For you." I liked that answer. He showed me scans. My bones were denser, thicker, perfectly shaped. My organs had scaled. My blood vessels had scaled. Even the structures that should have become inefficient at larger size appeared to be adjusting in ways he could not explain. "If this continues," he said, "normal biology stops being a useful reference. Normal biology stopped being useful 3 feet ago." He gave me the tired look he reserved for jokes he refused to encourage. Then he asked me again when the growth happened. I smiled. He sighed. "You're still not telling me." "Maybe I don't know. You know, I know a lot of things." He lowered the chart. "Adrian, one day the exact timing could matter." That was true, which was why I had not told him. I did not enjoy keeping it from Dr. Owen, but secrets are not only about trust, they are about control. And I had started to notice a pattern. People were becoming obsessed with one question. When would I stop? Reporters asked, doctors asked, fans asked, Caleb asked, Lena asked more carefully than the others. Grant asked with a smile. Everyone assumed there had to be an end. Puberty. A medical threshold. Some magical maximum. I had no evidence of one. That made them nervous. It made me excited. Because a person with a fixed advantage could be measured. A person with a growing advantage forced everyone else to keep recalculating. I wanted them recalculating forever. Lena nearly discovered the midnight secret in month 6. Nearly. She had noticed something in our weekly measurements. I was always slightly taller in morning videos than expected. Not enough for anyone else to care. Enough for her. She came to my house one evening with a camera bag and no warning. "Sleepover," she said. "No. Science. No. You grow at night." I leaned against the doorframe. I had to duck beneath it now. Most people do. Not like you. Caleb, who happened to be there eating almost everything in my kitchen, looked between us. "Wait, is this still secret?" Lena glared at him. He slowly lowered a sandwich. I smiled. Caleb knew I grew daily. He did not know the exact moment. I had told him it happened sometime during deep sleep. That was another useful lie. Lena held up her phone. "You were 7'11" yesterday at 4 in the afternoon. Today at 9 in the morning, you were 8 feet. Maybe I had a good dinner. Adrian." I let silence sit between us. Then I made a decision. Not to tell her. To give her a puzzle. Stay until 1. Her eyes narrowed. Caleb stopped chewing. Lena stepped inside. At 11:40, I went to my room. At 11:50, I came back wearing thick slippers. Lena noticed. Of course she noticed. At 11:55, I sat on the couch. At 11:59, she stood up with the measuring tape. I refused. The clock changed to midnight. I grew. The slippers hid the increase in overall standing height. My seated posture hid the shift. My loose shirt hid the proportions. Lena watched me like a hawk. At 12:03, I stood. She measured. 1 centimeter taller. Her eyes widened. Midnight. I looked surprised. Not too surprised. Just enough. Then Caleb said, "No way." He had actually not known. Excellent. Lena stared at me. "You knew." I said nothing. "You knew the whole time." I smiled. She threw a couch pillow at my face. I caught it with one hand. Caleb started laughing so hard he nearly fell over. Lena pointed at me. "You are impossible." "No, I'm very measurable." She threw another pillow. That night, I told her and Caleb the rule. Exactly 1 centimeter. Exactly midnight. No exceptions. I did not tell Dr. Owen yet. Lena asked why I trusted them. I told Caleb, "Because you're terrible at keeping a straight face, so no one will believe you." He looked offended. Then I looked at Lena. "And because you already solved it." That satisfied her. Mostly. The next morning, she made me promise one thing. If the rate changed, I told her first. I agreed. I did not expect that promise to matter. At the time, the rate had never changed. 1 centimeter. Every day. Perfect. Predictable. Beautiful. And because it was predictable, I could plan something no one else would see coming. My 1-year height. People were already joking that eventually I would be able to look into second-story windows. I did the math. They were underestimating me. By the end of the year, I would be over 17 feet tall. That was not a tall person. That was architecture. So I began preparing in secret. Not for survival, not for medicine, for an entrance. Because if I was going to become a human landmark, I refused to do it quietly. The first part of my plan was to make people doubt me. That sounds backward. Most famous people become terrified when the internet calls them fake. I encouraged it. At 8 feet 2, a popular compilation started circulating that claimed my height was mostly camera tricks. The video used freeze frames, perspective lines, door measurements, a slow-motion clip of my giant shoes. The creator never showed their face, which was convenient because I did not need another important person entering my life. The theory was simple. No human could grow that fast and stay healthy. Therefore, I was faking it. Some people said I wore hidden platform shoes. Others said Lena edited every video. One especially confident commenter claimed Caleb was secretly 5'9", and the entire basketball team had been digitally resized. Caleb spent an hour complaining about that one. I am not 5'9". I know. They made a diagram. I saw it. It had arrows. Very persuasive arrows. He pointed at me. "You're enjoying this." Of course I was. The fake theory did something useful. It divided the audience. Half wanted to prove I was real. Half wanted to prove I was fake. Both halves watched everything I posted. Lena knew immediately that I was refusing to deny it on purpose. "What are you setting up?" she asked. "Nothing." "That means something." "Maybe. Adrian." I smiled. She hated that smile. 3 weeks later, I announced a live appearance in the center of a packed outdoor plaza. No special stage. No basketball hoop. No prepared stunt. Just me, Lena, Caleb, and a measuring pole. The pole was 12 feet tall. At the time, I was 8 feet 9. The plaza filled hours early. People brought homemade signs. Some said I was a miracle. Some said I was a fraud. One person brought an enormous cardboard ruler. Excellent initiative. Lena started the live stream. I walked into the plaza wearing flat socks. No shoes. No hat. No coat. Nothing that could hide extra height. The crowd roared. Then I stepped aside the measuring pole. 8 feet 9. Exactly what I had publicly predicted the previous week. That should have ended the fake theory. I did not let it. I looked at the cameras. Some of you still think this is perspective. I picked up the 12-foot measuring pole. It was lightweight aluminum, but the crowd did not know that. I held it horizontally above my head with one arm. So I brought perspective with me. Then I turned and placed one end against a second-story balcony. I stretched my other arm upward. My fingers almost touched the railing. Almost. I knew they would not reach. That mattered. A perfect stunt gives people an answer. A nearly perfect stunt gives them a date to come back. I looked at the balcony, then at the camera. Give me a few weeks. That single sentence became the new countdown. Every day, people calculated how close I was to the balcony. Lena posted a weekly comparison. Caleb started placing objects on high shelves just to irritate me. I retaliated by moving everything in his kitchen to the top of his cabinets. He called it psychological warfare. I called it interior design. The fake theory disappeared. Not because I disproved it, because I gave people a better story. That is the easiest way to beat an idea. Do not fight it. Replace it. By the 7th month, I was 9 feet tall. At 9 feet, the world became hilarious. I could see over almost every crowd. I could reach the top of street signs. I could rest my forearms on basketball rims. A standard basketball court had stopped feeling like a court and started feeling like a desk. I could dunk without jumping, so I stopped dunking normally. Normal was useless. I started inventing impossible shots. I would stand under the basket facing away, reach backward over my head, and drop the ball through. I would sit in a reinforced chair outside the paint and still block shots. I once lay flat on the floor with one arm extended and made Caleb dribble around my reach like he was navigating a fence. He hated that clip. It got 60 million views. Grant watched all of it. I knew because his company began posting its own giant challenges. They built an 11-foot robotic basketball player. They filmed athletes trying to score over it. Then Grant appeared at the end of the video and looked into the camera. Adrian, whenever you're ready. Caleb sent me the clip with 17 laughing emojis. Lena sent the same clip with one sentence. Trap, I replied, obviously. Grant's robot was not designed to beat me at basketball. It was designed to create a headline. If I refused, I looked afraid. If I accepted and won, his platform got the views. If I lost, he got the better headline. Very neat. So I accepted. Then I changed the game. I announced that I would not try to score over the robot. I would try to teach Caleb how to score over it. Grant could not object. His challenge was still happening. The audience still came. But now the event was no longer man versus machine. It was me turning my old rival into a weapon. The robot was 11 feet tall with long arms, fast motors, and motion tracking. Caleb took his first shot. Blocked. Second shot. Blocked. Third shot. Blocked so hard it bounced into the audience. Grant smiled from the sideline. I watched the robot, not the ball. The machine tracked torso movement, then estimated shot direction. Fast. Accurate. But machines have habits too. Everything does. I told Caleb to exaggerate his shoulder. He did. The robot shifted. Again. He faked left. The robot's arm moved early. There. A fraction of a second. The machine predicted too confidently. I walked onto the court. I did not explain. I positioned Caleb near the baseline. I stood behind him. The robot faced both of us. Then I raised my right hand as if I were about to receive a pass. Its sensors tracked me. Caleb moved. The robot hesitated between targets. Caleb shot. Swish. The crowd erupted. Grant stopped smiling. Good. Next possession, I stepped left. Caleb went right. The machine split its attention. Score. Then I crouched. The robot lowered its defensive posture to track me. Caleb lobbed the ball high. Score. I had not touched the ball. I had become a moving decoy. By the 10th basket, Caleb was laughing. By the 20th, the robot looked less like a terrifying defender and more like an expensive coat rack. I finally walked toward Grant. Good machine. He looked at me. You're not playing. I am. I spread my arms. The robot turned toward me automatically. Caleb dunked behind it. The crowd exploded again. Grant laughed despite himself. That was why he remained interesting. He did not sulk when beaten. He learned. A week later, he sent me a new invitation. No logo, no giant event render, just coordinates, a time, and a photo of a warehouse. Lena looked at it. That is definitely a trap. Yes. You're going? Yes. Caleb looked between us. Do either of you know what a bad idea looks like? We both looked at him. He sighed. Right. Stupid question. The warehouse contained a miniature city, not a model. A full indoor obstacle course built from fake streets, low rooftops, signs, balconies, scaffolding, and narrow passages. Grant stood in the middle. "This is for you." I looked around. Some doorways were too small. Some alleys were too narrow. There were hanging obstacles at exactly my chest height. Everything was designed to punish size. I loved it instantly. Grant explained the challenge. Reach the far side as fast as possible. No breaking anything. No climbing over the outer walls. Caleb went first. He sprinted through doors, under rails, across platforms, and down fake staircases. Fast, very fast. He finished in 2 minutes and 12 seconds. Grant looked at me. "Your turn." I examined the course. The obvious route was impossible for me. That was the point. I could not fit through the first door without crouching almost to my knees. The second section had a tunnel. The third had a tight staircase. The audience watching the live stream could see the disadvantage immediately. Comments flooded in. Too big. Too slow. Finally exposed. I stepped to the line. Lena held the camera. She narrowed her eyes. She knew I had seen something. The buzzer sounded. I did not move. 1 second. 2. 3. Grant raised an eyebrow. Then I turned sideways. The first fake building had a window. The rules said no breaking. They did not say I had to use doors. I stepped through the open window. The crowd laughed. I crossed the first room in 2 steps, leaned through another window, and entered the alley without touching the narrow doorway. At the tunnel, I did not crawl. I lay flat, reached through the entire tunnel, grabbed the overhead bar at the far end, and pulled myself forward like a giant snake. Caleb screamed with laughter. At the staircase, I stepped onto the 3rd stair, then the 7th, then the landing. 3 steps. I was not navigating the course. I was deleting it. The hanging obstacles became handholds. The low walls became rails. The gaps became single strides. At one point, the path zigzagged around 4 fake buildings. I planted 1 foot at the first corner, reached across the roofline, grabbed a support pole, and swung my body around the entire turn without entering 2 of the alleys. I finished in 1 minute and 41 seconds. The audience lost its mind. Grant stared at the clock, then at me. "You found 6 shortcuts." 7. He looked back at the course. I pointed at a balcony. "I used the shadow to judge where the floor ended." He laughed. Then he clapped. That event changed our rivalry. Until then, Grant had treated my height as a gimmick he could package. Afterward, he started treating me as a strategist, which meant his next move became much more dangerous. He stopped challenging my body. He challenged my image. A month later, Grant launched a new celebrity series built around ordinary talent. No height advantages. No giant stunts, no custom equipment. The advertisements were subtle. People praised how real the participants were. How relatable, how refreshing it was to watch people without a physical gimmick. He never mentioned me. He did not need to. The internet did it for him. For the first time in months, my numbers dipped. Not collapsed, dipped. Caleb panicked more than I did. "He's making people tired of you." No. He literally built a whole show around people not being giant. Exactly. Lena looked at me. She understood first. He made ordinary people a category. I smiled, which means I'm still the reference point. Grant had tried to make my uniqueness feel repetitive, smart, but he had made one mistake. He assumed my only changing variable was height. My body was changing. My strategy could change faster, so I disappeared. No posts, no public stunts, no interviews, no measurements. For 10 days, nothing. The internet went from relieved to curious, then curious to concerned, then obsessed. People started counting. If I had continued growing, how tall was I now? Was I sick? Had I stopped? Had the miracle ended? Theories multiplied. Grant's show premiered during my silence. It performed well, very well. I congratulated him privately. He replied with a smiling emoji. I did not know if he understood what was coming. On day 11, Lena started a live stream from a normal-looking grocery store. She walked through the produce section alone. No explanation. Hundreds of thousands joined, then millions. People spammed my name. She ignored them. She pushed the cart, turned into the cereal aisle, and stopped. The top shelf was empty. Then a giant hand came down from above the camera frame holding 3 cereal boxes. I lowered them into her cart. The camera tilted up and up and up. I was 9 feet 9. I wore a ridiculous yellow grocery store apron that barely reached my waist. I looked into the lens. Did I miss anything? The viewer count doubled. Within minutes, clips of my return were everywhere. But I did not do a stunt. I stocked shelves. Top shelves. Only top shelves. I walked down each aisle while shoppers handed me items they could not reach. At one point, a child pointed at a box on the highest display. I picked up the entire display tray and lowered it like an elevator. Lena nearly ruined the shot because she was laughing. The video was stupid, wholesome, easy to understand. And most importantly, completely different from the giant athlete image Grant had spent a month positioning against. The next day, I did not post basketball. I posted myself washing second-story windows from the sidewalk. The day after that, I held umbrellas over an entire line of people waiting in the rain. Then I stood behind a marching band and held a giant banner above everyone without poles. Then I appeared at a beach and used a bedsheet as a towel. The public mood changed. I was no longer the guy doing the same giant stunts. I was the giant making normal life ridiculous. Grant's ordinary talent show could not attack that without sounding bitter. He called me. You vanished on purpose. Obviously. You waited for people to miss you. Yes. You used my launch to create contrast. Thank you for noticing. There was a pause. Then he laughed. I really do like you. I know. He invited me onto his show. I accepted. That surprised Lena. He built it to oppose you, which is why I should be on it. The episode's theme was ordinary household skills. Cooking, laundry, building simple furniture. Things I was supposedly too unusual to make entertaining. Grant expected the joke to be that I struggled with normal-sized tools. He was correct. I struggled spectacularly. The kitchen counter reached just above my knees. The frying pan looked like a spoon. The apron looked like a napkin. When I tried to crack an egg gently, it exploded in my fingers. Caleb, watching from the side, fell over laughing. I let the audience enjoy it. That mattered. Power becomes irritating when it never looks vulnerable. So I lost the cooking challenge, badly. I burned pancakes. I crushed a whisk. I accidentally lifted the entire small table when a drawer got stuck. Grant won. The audience loved it. Then came furniture assembly. A flat-packed wooden chair. Grant finished his in 11 minutes. I stared at my pile of parts, then at the finished example, then at the camera. I don't think this is rated for me. Everyone laughed. I assembled it anyway, very carefully. I sat. The chair exploded. Caleb hit the floor again. Grant looked triumphant, exactly as planned, because the final challenge was laundry. Grant had prepared enormous piles of clothing. We had to carry everything across the studio, sort it, and fold it. He had forgotten one thing. My arms were nearly as long as he was tall. I picked up half the laundry in one hug. One trip. Then I sat on the floor and folded shirts using my thighs as a table. I finished so quickly the timer operator thought something had broken. Grant stared at my empty basket. I held up the last folded towel. Ordinary enough? The clip dominated the episode. He had spent an hour proving I was bad at normal life. I needed 40 seconds to turn the entire concept into another height advantage. After filming, Lena cornered me backstage. You threw the first 2 challenges. I was genuinely bad at the egg. The rest, I looked at her. She crossed her arms. You wanted him ahead. People prefer comebacks. You could have built the chair stronger. Probably. You sat harder than necessary. I sat normally. Adrian. I smiled. She shook her head. You are exhausting. Yet you keep showing up. Someone has to stop you from becoming unbearable. You're several months late. At 10 feet, I became too large for most sports to remain interesting. Basketball was especially broken. I could stand under the hoop and touch the rim with my forehead if I leaned forward. Caleb tried to defend me once and disappeared behind my torso. So we changed the game. We raised the basket. 12 feet, then 14, then 16. At 16 feet, I had to jump again. That made people care. Soon, custom Adrian hoops appeared in gyms as a novelty. Tall athletes tried them. Most failed. Caleb practiced for weeks until he could dunk on the 12-foot version. The first time he did it, he celebrated like he had won a championship. I let him enjoy the moment for exactly 6 seconds. Then I dunked on the 14-foot hoop. He threw the ball at me. I caught it. That became another clip, but the taller hoops gave me a new idea. The world had always built dimensions around average people. Doorways, seeds, beds, counters, sports. What if I stopped trying to fit into the normal world and made normal people try mine? I rented a huge empty event hall. Then I made everything gigantic. A dining table 6 feet tall. A chair with a seat 4 feet off the ground. A door 12 feet high. A drinking cup the size of a bucket. A toothbrush longer than Caleb's arm. A basketball that required 2 hands for most people. For me, it all felt almost normal. For everyone else, it was a giant's house. Lena filmed visitors trying to climb into chairs. Caleb needed a small ladder to sit at the table. Grant arrived without warning. He stood beneath the doorway and looked up. "All right," he said. "This is good. I know. I hate that it's good. I know." The event became a sensation. People waited hours to experience 10 minutes of my scale. I did not need to explain what my life felt like. I made them feel small. That was more powerful. The funniest part was watching people become exactly like I had been at 5'5". They asked for help reaching things. They complained that the furniture was unfair. They stretched. They jumped. They climbed. I walked through the room casually, using everything without effort. Caleb looked up at me from the oversized chair. "This is revenge, isn't it?" I considered the question. Educational revenge. I knew it. I reached over and moved his giant cup farther away. He glared. I smiled. By month 8, I was almost 11 feet. My house could no longer contain me comfortably. The ceiling was high enough in some rooms, but the proportions were wrong. I had to duck under interior door frames. I could not fully extend my arms in the hallway. My bed had been replaced twice. So I moved into a converted studio with an industrial ceiling. The internet called it my lair. I encouraged that. I placed one enormous chair in the center, a massive wall display, a basketball hoop mounted absurdly high, a long table covered with my daily measurements. Lena walked in and stopped. "You actually built a villain headquarters. It's a studio. You have one chair. It's my chair. What do guests sit on?" I pointed at normal chairs near the wall. She looked at them, then back at my throne-sized chair. "You are not subtle. Subtlety is useful when people are looking for something." I sat. "When they are already watching, subtlety is wasted." She pretended not to be impressed. That was one of her weaker skills. Dr. Owen's reaction was different. He looked at the measurements on the wall, at my reinforced exercise equipment, at the height marks reaching upward. Then he looked at me. "You're planning around the assumption this never stops." "Yes." "What if it does? Then I have a large studio. And if it doesn't?" I looked at the ceiling. "Then I get a larger one." He did not smile. Dr. Owen worried more as I grew. Not because my tests were bad, because they were too good. My resting heart rate remained stable. My coordination improved. My strength increased faster than simple scaling suggested it should. At 11 feet, I could lift objects that would have required several people before. My jumps were becoming absurd. My skin, joints, bones, everything adapted. He said it made no medical sense. I said that was becoming a boring sentence. Then one afternoon, he showed me something that did make me pause. Video from my movement tests. Month 2, month 5, month 8. He played them side by side. My reaction speed had not slowed. My limbs traveled farther, but I controlled them just as quickly. That meant my hands were moving much faster through space. I watched myself catch a falling ball in the newest clip. The motion looked almost casual. Dr. Owen paused it. "Do you understand what this means?" "Yes." "You're not simply scaling." "I know. Your nervous system is keeping up with dimensions it shouldn't be able to handle." "I know. You keep saying that. Because you keep giving me good news." He rubbed his forehead. "This is not automatically good news." I leaned forward. The reinforced bench creaked. "Can I move safely at full speed?" "Based on the tests, yes." "Can I jump safely?" "So far." "Can I lift more?" "Probably." I stood. Then it's good news. He grabbed my sleeve before I walked away. My sleeve was wider than his torso. Adrian. I looked down. For once, don't turn this into a stunt immediately. I considered it. Define immediately. He closed his eyes. 3 days later, I announced the Human Crane Challenge. Dr. Owen sent me a message containing only a period. I knew what it meant. The challenge was simple. A platform held a row of increasingly large objects. A suitcase, a bicycle, a couch, a refrigerator, a vending machine, a small decorative car shell with the engine removed. The question was how many I could lift and move across a marked line. The internet expected the refrigerator to stop me. I had tested more than that. Lena knew. Caleb did not. Grant showed up because of course he did. The event started. Suitcase. I threw it onto my shoulder. Bicycle. One hand. Couch. I lifted one end, rotated it, then carried it upright like a giant briefcase. Refrigerator. 2 hands. Easy. The crowd grew louder. Vending machine. I wrapped my arms around it, lifted, walked 5 steps, and set it down. People screamed. Grant looked at the car shell. So did Caleb. No, Caleb said. I looked at him. Yes, the shell was lightweight by car standards, but still heavy. More importantly, awkward. I crouched. Grip under the frame. Straight back. Drive through the legs. I lifted. For half a second, nothing moved. Then the entire shell rose. The sound from the audience hit me like a wall. I stood up with a car-shaped object in my hands. Lena's camera shook. I carried it across the line, set it down. Then, because the moment was already ridiculous, I opened the empty driver door, climbed halfway inside, and pretended to steer while my legs remained outside. The crowd laughed so loudly I could barely hear. Grant walked toward me. You're getting stronger. Yes. How much? I looked at him. Enough. His eyes narrowed. There it was. The next layer. Height had been public. Strength was now public. And Grant did what intelligent competitors do when the board changes. He changed his strategy. He stopped trying to beat me physically. Instead, he started trying to make me say yes. Invitations arrived constantly. Race a professional sprinter while carrying furniture. Pull a bus. Play basketball against 5 people at once. Reach the roof of a 2-story building without stairs. Stand in a wind tunnel. Wear a suit with 100 pockets. That last one almost got me, but I refused everything. For 2 weeks I did nothing Grant suggested. I chose smaller, stranger appearances instead. I helped decorate an enormous holiday display by placing ornaments high on a tree without a lift. I served as a human camera crane for Lena by holding her platform above a crowd. I carried Caleb across a muddy field because he refused to ruin his shoes. He complained the entire time. The photo became his profile picture. Grant finally called. Why are you avoiding my events? I'm not. You rejected 7. 8. There was a pause. You counted. Obviously. What do you want? Now we were at the useful part. I had no interest in paperwork wars or clever fine print. I wanted something simple. A stage. Grant owned the largest indoor entertainment arena in the city. The roof clearance was enormous. The floor could support heavy equipment. The giant screens could turn one person into a national event. I wanted it for New Year's Eve. He laughed. That's my biggest night. I know. You want the whole arena? Yes. For what? I looked at the height chart on my wall, the New Year's date, the projected number. Then I smiled. I want to show everyone what next year looks like. Grant was quiet. That was rare. Then he said, beat one challenge. Which one? You choose from the 7. 8. Fine. 8. I already knew. The rooftop. His voice changed. That was the one he wanted. Reach the roof of a 2-story training building without stairs. No climbing equipment. No crane. No ladder. The building was nearly 26 feet tall. I was a little over 11. Standing reach. Around 14 and a half. Jump reach. Higher. Still not enough. Grant knew that. Lena saw the problem immediately. You can't touch the roof. Correct. You accept it anyway. Yes. Why? I showed her the date. The challenge was scheduled 12 days later. She looked at the calendar, then at me. You'll gain 12 centimeters. Yes. Still not enough. I know. Then what are you planning? I smiled. She stared at me. Then she looked at the challenge photo. The building, the walls, the roof, the nearby pavement, the small decorative awning halfway up. Her eyes narrowed. You found something. Several things. Are you going to tell me? No. She threw another pillow at me. By then she had learned to aim higher. 12 days later, the rooftop challenge became Grant's most watched live event of the season. He had chosen the building well. 2 stories, flat walls, no fire escape on the challenge side. The nearest tree was too far away. The decorative awning sat above the first floor, but it was narrow and sloped. The roof edge was high enough that even with my new height, I could not simply jump and grab it from the ground. Grant stood beside the starting line looking pleased. Caleb looked up at the roof, then at me, then back at the roof. You sure about this? Yes, because from here, it looks like the roof is up there. Excellent observation. Lena covered her mouth to hide a laugh. Grant explained the challenge to the cameras. Reach the roof, no stairs, no ladders, no cranes, no one helping me, no breaking the building, straightforward, physical, clean, exactly how I liked it. He asked if I was ready. I took off my coat. The crowd cheered. Then I took off my shoes. The crowd got louder. Grant frowned. I rolled my shoulders. At 11.5 feet tall, I had a stride that made normal running look strange. I had spent days learning how to accelerate without overstepping. I backed up almost 50 feet. Caleb's eyes widened. Oh no. I ran, not toward the wall, toward the corner. That was the first thing Grant had missed. A flat wall gave me nothing. A corner gave me 2 surfaces. I hit the building at speed, planted my left foot against one wall, right foot against the other, and drove upward. 1 step, 2. My body rose between the walls like a ridiculous human spider. The crowd screamed. At the top of the 2nd step, I pushed away from the corner. For a second, I was completely airborne. I reached sideways. My fingers caught the edge of the awning. It bent, held. I swung. The awning had not been my destination. It was my pendulum. I used the swing to throw my legs toward a decorative horizontal beam above the windows. My foot landed. The beam shook. I drove upward. Now I was high enough. I jumped. Both hands closed over the roof edge. The entire sequence had taken less than 5 seconds. I pulled myself up until my shoulders cleared the roof. Then I stopped. The cameras on the roof captured my face. I looked down at Grant, far below, and smiled. Then I climbed onto the roof and raised one hand. The noise was unbelievable. Caleb ran in circles. Lena was laughing while trying to keep the camera steady. Grant stared upward, hands on his hips. I had beaten the challenge, but I wanted the arena, so I gave him a moment worth replaying. I walked to the roof edge and sat down with my legs hanging over the side. From that position, I looked almost normal-sized against the building. I pointed toward Grant. New Year's being end. Mesta day the dawn. Grant looked at the audience, then at me. He knew what would happen if he refused now. Not because of fine print, not because of any technicality. Because the crowd wanted it. He raised both hands. New Year's being end. Betted it. The place exploded. I had not won an arena. I had made Grant announce my event for me. Much better. Back at the studio, Lena replayed the wall run 7 times. Mestenan fording. BOLR. An empty parking structure. Caleb looked alarmed. You did that on concrete? There were mats. He relaxed. Good. At the bottom. He stopped relaxing. Dr. Owen called 10 minutes later. I held the phone away from my ear while he expressed himself. When he finished, I said, The awning held. That is not the point. The beam held too. Also not the point. My shoulder feels fine. Adrian, yes? There was a long pause. Please come in tomorrow. I did. My shoulder was fine. He hated that. Not because he wanted me hurt. Because every ridiculous thing I survived gave me another ridiculous idea. He knew me too well. At the checkup, I finally told him the exact midnight rule. I had kept it secret for months. Now I was going to reveal it publicly anyway. He stared at me. Midnight, exactly, every night. Exactly, 1 centimeter? Exactly. He sat down. For the first time since meeting him, Dr. Owen looked personally offended by mathematics. You could have told me this 8 months ago. I could have. You didn't. No. Why? Because if I told you, you would have wanted to test it. Yes. And then other people would know. We could have kept it confidential. Maybe. He stared at me. I stared back. Eventually he sighed. You're telling the world on New Year's, aren't you? I smiled. He pointed at me. That face is why my blood pressure is getting worse. The New Year's arena sold out almost immediately. Grant wanted a giant spectacle. I wanted a controlled reveal. Naturally, we created both. The arena floor became a strange museum of my year. My original 5'5" height mark, the first basketball rim I had dunked on, a normal doorway, a normal bed, a normal car, the giant chair from my studio, the measuring pole from the plaza, the fake dinosaur tail from Grant's park, Caleb's clown shoes. He tried to remove those. I put them back. At one end of the arena stood a vertical illuminated ruler 20 feet tall. That was the centerpiece. At 11:50 p.m. I walked out. I was nearly 12 feet tall. The arena shook with noise. The giant screen showed me from multiple angles. Grant stood on a raised platform so we could appear in the same frame without him looking like a child. Lena handled the main live stream. Caleb had one job: stand beside my old height mark. He hated his job. I looked across the arena at the line marking 5'5". It seemed absurdly low. Less than a year earlier I had lived there. People had mocked me from above that line. Doors had towered over me. Basketball rims had been distant things. Now I could almost look over two of myself standing on each other's shoulders. The countdown began. 10 minutes. Grant asked the obvious question. Why reveal the timing now? I looked into the main camera. Because guessing was fun. I paused. Knowing will be better. Lena had helped me set up laser markers at my head, shoulder, hand, and knee. Not because one measurement was necessary, because 4 made denial look stupid. At 11:58, the entire arena dimmed. Only the ruler remained bright. I stood barefoot beside it. 11:59. The crowd counted the seconds. 10, 9, 8. I felt nothing unusual. I never did. 7, 6, 5. I looked at Lena. She watched the laser line. 4, 3. Caleb raised his phone. 2, 1. Midnight. The world moved downward. 1 centimeter. Exactly. The laser line shifted across my body. The ruler confirmed it. The crowd went silent for half a second. Then 20,000 people screamed at once. I had heard loud crowds before. This was different. They had just watched impossible mathematics happen in real time. Grant looked at the ruler, then at me. Even he seemed genuinely stunned. Lena was not. She had seen it before, but she knew what the moment meant. The secret was gone, and I had chosen the exact second to destroy it. I leaned toward the camera. Happy New Year. The clip became one of the most watched live moments online, but the real victory happened the next morning. Every news program, sports show, comedy channel, science page, and meme account used the same phrase, 1 centimeter every midnight. My rule became common knowledge. People built countdown clocks. They made prediction websites. They calculated future heights. They measured buildings and asked when I would be taller than them. They calculated when I could see into second-story windows, when I could touch streetlights, when I could look over buses, when I would be tall enough to use a basketball hoop like a cup holder. I had traded one secret for a worldwide schedule. Now everyone knew I was growing. That should have reduced the mystery. Instead, it made every day an episode. Lena understood immediately. You turned your body into a calendar. Yes, people can predict milestones. Yes, they'll keep coming back. Exactly. She looked at the giant height chart in my studio. You planned this before Grant's arena, months before. How early? I pointed near the 8-foot line. She stared at me, then shook her head. I hate how happy that makes you. I don't. The public countdown changed everything. Before, I surprised people by becoming taller. Now I had to surprise them with what I did at each height. That was harder, which made it fun. At 12 feet, I could reach things that had been impossible months earlier. I returned to the plaza balcony from the old viral clip. The same balcony, the same measuring pole, a massive crowd. I stood below it. Months earlier, my fingertips had fallen short. Now I reached up, placed my palm flat on the railing, and casually drummed my fingers. The audience cheered. I could have ended there. Instead, Lena appeared on the balcony holding a cup. She leaned over. I reached up. She handed it to me. I took a sip, then handed it back. The internet loved the casualness more than the reach itself. That became another lesson. When something impossible becomes easy, do not always shout, sometimes act bored. At 12'6", I could look through certain second-story windows from the ground if the building's first floor was low. I did not sneak around peeking into homes. That would have been creepy. I chose a television studio with an exterior second-floor window. The host began the segment alone. Halfway through, my face slowly rose outside the glass. The audience saw me before the host did. They started laughing. The host turned. I waved. Then I held up a handwritten sign. Need a guest? The clip went everywhere. At 13 feet, I visited an indoor basketball court and removed the hoop net by reaching up and unhooking it. No ladder, no jump. Caleb watched. Put that back. Why? Because basketball needs it. I held the net above his head. He jumped. Missed. Jumped again. Missed. I raised it another foot. He stared at me. This is what power does to people. I agree. Put it back. I did. Eventually. But the real problem at 13 feet was that my strength had reached a level that made normal demonstrations look fake. People did not believe a man could casually move objects that heavy, so I changed the visual language. I stopped lifting weights. I lifted situations. At an outdoor event, a delivery truck was parked sideways behind the stage as part of the setup. It was empty. I did not lift it. I could not. But I leaned against the back and pushed. The truck rolled. Slowly. The crowd started screaming. I kept walking. The truck kept moving. It looked like I was casually rearranging traffic. At another appearance, 10 adults held one end of a thick rope. I held the other. Tug of war. They pulled. I slid half a step and planted my feet. They stopped moving. I pulled. All 10 came forward. I did not yank them off their feet. That was unnecessary. I walked backwards slowly while an entire team shuffled toward me. The image was better. Caleb joined their side halfway through. It did not help. He blamed the grass. There was no grass. Grant responded with his smartest event yet. 5 against 1. Basketball. Full court. 5 skilled players. I was alone. Caleb was on the 5-person team. That made it interesting. At 13.5 feet, I could dominate the paint. But a full court was large. 5 players could spread out. They could pass around me. They could force me to chase. Grant presented it as the perfect test. Height versus teamwork. The audience immediately assumed I would try to block everything. That would have been exhausting. I had a better idea. I told Caleb before the game, "You're going to score a lot." He narrowed his eyes. Is that a compliment or a threat? Both. The game began. 5 players spread across the court. I stood near the center. They passed around me. Left, right, corner, basket, easy. Next possession, same thing, basket. The crowd cheered for the underdogs. Grant smiled. Caleb looked suspicious. He knew me. At 10-0, I finally took the ball. The defense collapsed. 5 people surrounded me. I raised the ball above my head. None of them could reach it. I took 1 step. 2. Dunk. 10-2. On defense, I changed completely. I stopped chasing the ball. I guarded space. My wingspan covered passing lanes that should not have belonged to one person. When the ball moved left, I took 1 step. When it moved right, 1 step back. I did not need to reach every player. I only needed to make the safe passes feel unsafe. They hesitated. That was enough. 1 bad pass floated too close. I reached out, steal, dunk, then another, then another. Caleb realized the problem. He started running behind me. Good. That was what I wanted. I let him score. Again and again. The audience thought he had solved me. He started getting confident. At 24-20, I whispered as he passed me. 1 extra dribble. His face changed. Years earlier, that had been his habit. He had improved since then. But when pressure rose, old patterns returned. Next possession, he drove left. 1 extra dribble. I turned, caught the ball out of his hands exactly like our first public scrimmage. The audience recognized it. The reaction was enormous. Caleb stood frozen. I smiled. Then I threw the longest basketball pass of my life, from one side of the court toward the opposite backboard. The ball struck high off the glass, rebounded forward. I had already started running. 3 giant strides, jump, catch, dunk, an alley-oop to myself from nearly full court. Grant actually stepped out of his seat. Lena's camera caught the whole thing. 24-22. The 5-person team panicked. They rushed. Bad decision. I picked off another pass. 24-24. Next score wins. Everyone expected me to drive. So I stayed near half court. The defenders backed up anyway. They were afraid of my stride. I looked at the basket, at my angle, at the ceiling, then at Caleb. He shook his head. He knew what I was considering. No. I shot. A full-court one-handed push shot, released from so high the arc looked wrong. The ball traveled forever. Hit the backboard. Hit the rim. Bounced straight up. For one terrible second I thought I had miscalculated. Then it dropped through. Game. The arena exploded. I raised both hands. The 5 players collapsed dramatically around me. Caleb lay on his back. I hate your stupid growth. I looked down. No, you don't. He sat up. No, I really don't. He was smiling. That game became important for another reason. People stopped treating my size as a passive gift. They saw strategy. I was not winning because I was tall. I was using being tall better than anyone else could imagine. That distinction mattered to me more than I admitted. I had spent years being underestimated for something I could not control. Now people overestimated the part I could not control. I wanted them to understand the difference. The centimeters were free. What I did with them was mine. Grant understood. Lena definitely understood. And that meant the next challenge had to attack the second part. Not my body, my brain. Grant announced it without warning. A giant maze, not a physical obstacle maze like the warehouse. A live strategy game played across an entire arena floor. Dozens of moving walls, hidden routes, timed gates, false shortcuts. I would enter alone. Caleb and Lena would watch from above. Grant would control the wall changes. The goal was simple. Reach the center before time ran out. The twist was better. Every 5 minutes, the walls would reconfigure. My height gave me one advantage. I could see farther over some sections. But Grant had designed the walls at different heights specifically to break sight lines. He looked into the camera during the announcement. Let's see if Adrian can outgrow a puzzle. I watched the clip twice. Then I laughed. Finally, the maze filled Grant's arena from wall to wall. From the upper seats, it looked like a giant circuit board. From ground level, it looked much worse. Some walls were 6 feet tall. Some were 12. Some were 15. At my current height, a little over 14 feet, I could see over the shorter sections but not the tallest ones. That was deliberate. Grant had built just enough visibility to make me trust my eyes. Then he built the rest to punish me for it. I arrived early enough to see the maze before the audience entered. He did not let me walk inside. Fine. I did not need to. I watched the workers test the moving sections. Left, right, rotate, slide, lock. Each wall moved on tracks hidden beneath the floor. The motors made different sounds depending on direction. Most people heard machinery. I heard vocabulary. Lena stood beside me. You're counting. Yes. What? Everything. Grant walked over. Enjoying the view? Very much. Don't get too attached. It'll change. I know. He smiled. I smiled. For the first time, our game felt perfectly balanced. He had built the board. I had to play it. The rules were simple enough to fit in one sentence. Reach the glowing platform at the center in 30 minutes. Every 5 minutes, the maze changed. No climbing over walls. No breaking through them. No outside help. I entered through the outer gate. The countdown began. I ran. Not fast. Grant expected fast. The audience expected fast. Even Lena looked confused. I took the first turn, then the second. At the first intersection, I stopped. I listened. A low mechanical hum. 2 walls moving somewhere to my right. One longer motor sound behind me. I continued. The first 5 minutes passed. Sirens sounded. The maze shifted. Walls slid. Paths closed. Others opened. I stood completely still. The audience booed jokingly. Grant's voice came over the arena speakers. Lost already? I looked toward the nearest camera. No. Then I closed my eyes. That got the crowd quiet. Motors hummed all around me. Short slide, long slide, rotation, lock. I counted. When the movement stopped, I opened my eyes and turned left. I had learned something. The walls did not change randomly. They changed in groups. Grant had built patterns, not because he was careless, because truly random movement would risk trapping me in a sealed space. The maze needed to remain solvable. That meant every configuration had structure. I spent the next 5 minutes not trying to reach the center. I mapped sound, one motor type for sliding north-south, a slightly higher pitch for east-west, a grinding turn for rotating walls. At 10 minutes, the maze changed again. This time I moved before the walls finished locking. Not through them, toward where I knew an opening would appear. The crowd reacted. Grant stopped smiling. Good. I entered the new corridor the instant it opened. Now I moved faster. My long stride ate distance. At one point I reached a 6-foot wall. I could not climb over it, so I leaned down and looked over. The path beyond was wrong. Dead end. Grant had expected me to trust the obvious visual shortcut. I turned away. At another intersection, the corridor split 3 ways. I listened. No motors. Then I looked upward. Not at the walls. At the arena lights. The moving walls cast long shadows across the floor. A tall wall hidden 2 corridors away blocked one section of light. That told me its position. I chose the opposite direction. Correct. 15 minutes. The maze shifted. By then I understood enough to become dangerous. I stopped following paths. I started predicting them. A wall slid shut behind me. I smiled. Ahead, 2 barriers rotated. I walked toward the place where they would separate. The gap opened exactly as I arrived. The audience screamed. Grant stared at his control display. I could see him on the giant screen above the arena. He looked delighted and irritated at the same time. Perfect. At 20 minutes I was close to the center. Too close. Grant changed tactics. The next configuration was different. The walls moved longer, more rotations, more noise. He had chosen the hardest pattern manually. I knew immediately. Lena knew too. Her camera found his face. He looked at her, then at me. The siren stopped. I was boxed into a narrow spiral. The center platform glowed only a few corridors away, but the route wound outward first. If I followed it normally, I would lose minutes. I looked over one 12-foot wall. Another 15-foot wall blocked the next sightline. I could not climb. I could not break anything. So I did something much simpler. I crouched. The audience went quiet. Then I lay down. At 14 feet tall, my body was longer than some of the maze corridors were wide. I put my face near the floor. There was a gap beneath the moving walls for the track mechanisms. Only a few inches, useless for a normal person, enough for vision. I looked under one wall, then another. Feet of spectators in the distance. Light. Track lines. Open space. I rotated on the floor like the world's largest compass needle, checking 3 directions from one position. The crowd started laughing. Grant covered his face with one hand. I found the correct route. Stood. Ran. 25 minutes. Final shift. The center was close. Grant had 1 move left. He opened 3 routes toward the glowing platform. 3 identical entrances. 1 direct, 2 fake. The fake routes curved away behind high walls. I could not see the endings. I stopped. 26 minutes. The crowd shouted directions. Left. Right. Middle. Useless. People love giving advice when they do not know anything. I looked at Grant. He stood beside the control station. His expression was neutral. Very good neutral. Too good. I looked at Lena. She refused to react. Also good. Caleb was much less useful. He was staring at the middle route, like his eyes could push me into it. I ignored him. 27 minutes. I thought about Grant. Not the maze. Grant. He knew I studied patterns. He knew I expected deception. So which path would he make correct? The obvious middle path looked too obvious. The left path had a slightly wider entrance, tempting someone my size. The right path looked narrow. A normal strategist would choose right because it seemed least attractive. Grant knew I would know that. He would expect me to choose against the obvious deception. Too many layers. That was the trap. When both players are trying to be clever, the simplest move becomes invisible. I chose the middle. The crowd screamed. I ran. The corridor went straight. 10 steps. Turn. Another straight. The glowing platform appeared. Grant's smile vanished. 28 minutes. 11 seconds. I stepped onto the center. Lights exploded across the arena. The maze froze. I raised one hand. Then I looked at Grant. He walked onto the floor slowly. When he reached the platform, he looked up at me. Why middle? Because he wanted me to overthink it. He laughed. I knew you'd think that. I knew you knew. I knew you knew I knew. Then why did I win? He stared at me for 1 second. The crowd waited. Finally, he said, because I thought you'd choose right. I smiled. Exactly. Lena later told me that exchange was the dumbest intelligent conversation she had ever heard. Caleb said he understood none of it. That was probably healthier. The maze should have settled the question of whether my brain could keep up with my body. It did not. The internet immediately created a new argument. Some people claimed Lena had signaled the route. Others claimed Grant had intentionally let me win. Others said I had memorized the floor plan beforehand. I did not fight those theories either. I had a better idea. I asked Grant for another challenge. His choice. No preparation time. He accepted immediately. That was the first time I surprised him into moving too fast. The next afternoon, he took me to one of his indoor parks. He stood in front of the largest attraction area and spread his arms. Hide and seek. I stared at him. Caleb laughed. Lena smiled. Grant looked pleased with himself. The rules were almost insulting. I had 15 minutes to hide somewhere inside the open public areas of the park. Then Grant, Caleb, Lena, and 100 camera-equipped searchers would look for me. I could not enter locked rooms. I could not leave the park. I could not cover myself with a tarp or costume. I could not ask anyone to hide me. At 14 feet 4, I was visible above most partitions. The park had been chosen because the ceiling was high and the attractions were colorful. Almost nowhere to disappear. Grant leaned closer. Let's see you strategize your way out of being 14 feet tall. I looked around. Robot dragon, pirate ship, fake volcano, arcade signs, giant character statues, huge advertising screens. Then I saw it. One of Grant's oldest promotional displays. A 20-foot cardboard cutout of me from months earlier. I was pictured standing with crossed arms beside the park logo. The cutout version was only about 9 feet tall. Outdated. Interesting. I said, start the clock. Everyone turned away while I hid. 15 minutes. I walked straight to the promotional area. Workers had placed several large character displays around a fake city street. I could not cover myself. Fine. I did not need to. I moved the old cardboard cutout slightly. Then I stood behind it. Not directly. Offset. The cutout covered my lower body. My real torso extended above it. That was a problem. So I crossed my arms in the exact same pose, tilted my head the same way, and stood perfectly still beside a row of giant decorative figures. From a distance, I looked like another updated display. Ridiculous. Impossible. Which made it effective. The search began. Cameras flooded the park. People ran past me. The first group barely looked. Why would Adrian hide in the open? The second group stopped. One person pointed at me. My heartbeat did not change. They walked closer. I did not blink. They laughed. One took a selfie with me. Then they walked away. I nearly lost control. Not from fear, from the effort of not laughing. 5 minutes passed. Caleb came around the corner. He looked directly at me. Stopped. Squinted. I stared over his head. He stepped closer. I remained frozen. He pulled out his phone, compared something on screen, then frowned. This statue looks weird. He walked away. I waited until he was around the corner. Then I silently raised one finger toward the camera Lena had placed high above the street. The live stream audience exploded. They knew. The searchers did not. 10 minutes. Grant walked past. He was less careless. He looked at every large display. He stopped in front of me. My arms were starting to ache from holding the pose. He stared. I stared. Then someone shouted from across the park. Grant turned his head. That was enough. I changed one detail. I lowered my chin by an inch. When he looked back, the pose seemed slightly different from what he remembered, but human memory is terrible at small visual details. He frowned. Then continued. 14 minutes. Lena finally approached. She knew. Of course she knew. She had been watching the live stream comments indirectly through the production team. She stopped 10 feet away. I stared at her. She stared at me. The clock ticked. 30 seconds. She could expose me. She smiled. Then she looked past me and shouted, "Check the pirate ship." Everyone ran. 10, 9, 8. I moved my eyes toward her. 7, 6, 5. Grant turned back. 4. He saw me. Really saw me. His face changed. 3. He pointed. 2. Adrian. 1. The alarm sounded. I unfolded my arms. The park exploded with laughter. Caleb sprinted back around the corner. He looked at me, then at the cardboard cutout, then at me again. No. I bent over laughing. He pointed at my chest. I took a selfie with you. I know. You were breathing. Quietly. I hate this. He did not. The photo he had taken became the thumbnail. Grant admitted defeat. Then, because he could not help himself, he immediately challenged me to reverse hide and seek. I had to find him. I found him in 3 minutes. He hid inside the fake volcano. It was the first place I checked because it was the place he thought would be too obvious. He called that unfair. I called it educational revenge. By month 10, I was 15 feet tall. At 15 feet, I stopped blending into architecture and started competing with it. Single-story buildings looked small. Street-level signs hung near my shoulders. Bus roofs were below my eyes. I could look into many second-story windows without standing on anything. Every outdoor appearance turned into a crowd, whether I planned one or not. That created a new problem. I could no longer move through public spaces casually, not because I was famous, because people could see me coming from blocks away. Lena called it celebrity radar. Caleb called it being a lighthouse with sneakers. I called it useful. If everyone could see me, I could control where they looked. I started using entrances as events. At one appearance, I did not enter through the front doors. I walked along the outside of the building until I reached the second-floor event space. Then I tapped on the window. Everyone inside turned. I waved. They opened the window. I leaned in. Is this the entrance? The room lost control. At another event, the main stage had a massive backdrop. Instead of walking around it, I reached over from behind, picked up the top edge, and lifted it just enough to duck underneath. It looked as if the stage itself had opened for me. At a parade, the planned giant float broke before the route started. The organizers panicked. I looked at the enormous decorative banner mounted on it. Then I picked up one end. Caleb picked up the other. He lasted 6 seconds. I ended up carrying the entire front frame, while a group supported the back. The parade continued. The crowd thought it was intentional. That was the advantage of being ridiculous. Mistakes looked like stunts. The money became absurd. I did not care about luxury very much. Luxury had been designed for normal-sized people. Sports cars were useless. Designer jackets became crop tops. Fancy hotel rooms required crouching. So I spent money on scale, a larger studio, higher doors, reinforced floors, custom exercise equipment, an indoor court with adjustable hoops, a bed large enough that Caleb once fell asleep on one corner, and I did not notice for an hour. I also built a giant kitchen counter at my height. The first time Lena visited after it was installed, she stood below the edge. You did this on purpose. What? You know I can't see the surface. I looked down at her. Now you understand my childhood. She found a step stool. I moved it. She found another. I moved that too. She threw a dish towel at me. I caught it. Then I lowered a hidden platform from under the counter. She stared at it. You built a lift. For guests. You made me suffer first. For education. She pressed the button and rose to counter height. One day, you're going to be too tall for this place. Yes. And you'll build another. Yes. And another. Probably. She looked at me for a moment. The joke faded. You really think this never ends? I looked at the height marks along the wall. 15 feet. 3 months left until the first anniversary. I don't know. That was the truth. For all my confidence, I did not know. I knew it happened every midnight. I did not know why. I did not know whether day 365 would be different from day 364. I did not know whether my body would stop at 20 feet, 50 feet, or never. But fear is only useful when it points toward preparation. So I prepared. Lena asked, "Does that bother you?" I thought about it. No. She waited. I continued. It would bother me more if I knew exactly where the ceiling was. She smiled a little. Of course you'd say that. At 15 feet 6, Grant made his most aggressive move. Not dangerous, not cruel, just aggressive. He announced a bigger than Adrian week. Every attraction, challenge, prop, and stunt would be built larger than me. A 20-foot chair, a 30-foot basketball hoop, a 40-foot sandwich, a giant shoe, a huge robot, an enormous foam hand that could supposedly high-five me from across an arena. The advertisements were funny. They were also strategic. Grant was trying to make me look small again. For the first time in months, his campaign produced images where I was not the largest thing in frame. People loved it. I loved it too. Lena did not trust my reaction. You're too happy. I like the chair. You're planning something. The sandwich is impressive. Adrian. I had already accepted Grant's invitation to attend the final event. The centerpiece was the giant robot. 22 feet tall. Not athletic this time. Just a massive entertainment machine with glowing eyes, moving arms, and a platform in its chest where Grant could stand. He had finally found a way to look down on me again. That was the entire joke. And because Grant understood theater, he saved it for the end. The arena darkened. The robot rose. Grant stood in the chest platform, several feet above my head. The crowd roared. He looked down at me. How does it feel? I looked up. Familiar. He laughed. The giant robot raised one hand. I high-fived it. Then Grant leaned over the rail. For once, I'm taller. I nodded. For once. The audience laughed. He expected me to challenge the robot physically. Push it, race it, climb it. Something obvious. I did none of those. I walked away. Grant blinked. I crossed the arena floor to the 20-foot chair from his campaign. It towered over me. I placed one hand on the seat, then another. The chair was hollow, lightweight stage construction. Still enormous. I pulled. It tilted. The audience screamed. Grant's face changed. I dragged the giant chair across the floor. Slowly, dramatically. Every camera followed. I positioned it beside the robot. Then I climbed onto the seat. Now my head was above Grant's platform. The crowd exploded. I sat back, crossed one leg over the other, and looked down at him. Grant stared upward. I rested my elbow on the chair arm. Better. He burst out laughing. That image ended the campaign. Not Grant standing taller than me using his giant furniture as a throne. He had built an entire week around making things bigger than Adrian. I had turned the biggest object into my chair. That was the exact kind of victory I liked. Not destroying the other person's move, completing it in a way they regretted. After the event, Grant handed me a drink in a cup the size of a bucket. You know I'm going to top that. I hope so. You'd be bored if I stopped. Very. He nodded toward the giant robot. Next time, no chair. Then build me something else. He laughed. At that point, Grant and I had stopped pretending the rivalry was hostile. We were competitors, but we were also making each other better. He built better traps because I escaped the old ones. I built better moments because he forced me to. Lena watched both of us and complained that we were encouraging each other's worst instincts. Caleb encouraged them louder. Dr. Owen encouraged nothing. Especially not what happened at 16 feet. That was when I discovered I could jump onto the roof of a parked bus. Not grab it, not climb, jump. The bus was part of a controlled stunt area. Dr. Owen had approved the surface. He had not approved my interpretation of low-impact movement. I stood 30 feet away, ran, jumped. My feet landed on the reinforced roof. The bus barely moved. I stood there with my arms out. Caleb looked up. That's not low impact. It felt low. Lena shouted from the camera platform. Do it again. Dr. Owen made a sound that cannot be spelled accurately. I did it again. The second jump was better. By then, my body felt less like an enlarged human body and more like a new category of machine. My stride covered ridiculous distance. My hands could grip rails like handles. My shoulders could carry loads that used to require equipment. Yet I remained fast, precise, balanced. The world kept expecting giant size to make me slow. Every month I punished that assumption. And with only weeks left before the 1-year mark, everyone started asking the same question. What would I do on day 365? I gave them nothing. No hints, no countdown event, no arena announcement. Grant offered his largest venue. I declined. Lena asked every day. I refused. Caleb tried to bribe me with food. I ate the food and refused. Dr. Owen asked for medical reasons. I told him my plan was medically boring. That was technically true. The dangerous part was not physical. It was psychological. Because for 1 year, everyone had watched me climb. 5'5", 6 feet, 7, 8, 10, 12, 15, 16. Every milestone had been public. Every new advantage had become a spectacle. If I celebrated 1 year with another giant stunt, it would only be bigger. Bigger was expected. I needed something that looked smaller. Something that would make the entire year snap into focus at once. So I went back to school. The school had changed less than I expected. That was insulting. I had spent a year becoming a walking building, and the front sign still had the same faded corner. The same trees lined the entrance. The same gym roof sat behind the main building. The same second-story windows reflected the sky. Only my perspective had changed. A lot. I arrived before classes ended. Not secretly. Secrecy was no longer available to a 17-foot man approaching a school. By then, I was a little over 17 feet, and people could see my head moving above parked vehicles from far down the street. Students appeared at windows, then more students, then teachers. Phones rose everywhere. The front entrance was obviously impossible, so I walked along the building, past the first-floor windows, past the corner, until I reached the courtyard. Then I stopped. The second-story windows were directly in front of my face. For a moment, I said nothing. I just looked. A year earlier, the second floor had been above me. Not metaphorically, not emotionally. Physically above me. Now I could see the ceiling lights inside. Students crowded around the windows. One opened. I leaned closer. The entire room backed up at once. I smiled. "Is Caleb here?" Laughter erupted. He was. Of course he was. Caleb had agreed to meet me but did not know what I was planning. A minute later, he appeared in the courtyard. At 6'6", he had once seemed enormous. Now the top of his head barely reached above my knee. The image was ridiculous. He looked up, and up, and up. "You know, I liked you better at 6 feet. "No, you didn't." "True." I crouched. Even crouching, I towered over him. Then I held out my hand. He looked at it. My palm was huge compared with his. He slapped it. The crowd cheered. I stood. Then I did something I had waited an entire year to do. I placed one finger lightly on his shoulder. Not an elbow, a finger. He looked at it, then at me. No. I leaned slightly. Comfortable. He knocked my finger away. The courtyard exploded. That clip alone would have been enough. I was not there for one clip. I walked toward the gym. The exterior loading doors had been opened for me. Inside, the basketball court looked tiny. The hoop looked insulting. I had once stared at that rim and wondered what it would feel like to dunk. Now the rim was below my shoulder. The same coach who had first invited me onto the team stood near the baseline. No name. No dramatic speech. Just a stunned expression. That was better. I walked under the hoop, reached out, wrapped one hand around the rim. Then I lifted my feet. I hung from it. My knees almost touched the floor. Everyone laughed. I dropped lightly. Caleb bounced me a ball. It looked smaller in my hand than ever. He pointed at the hoop. "Do it." I looked at him. Too easy. The crowd booed jokingly. Good. I wanted that. I walked backward, farther, past half court, all the way to the opposite baseline. The gym grew louder with every step. I held the ball in one hand. There was no angle from which a normal shot made sense. That was the point. I looked at the hoop, then at the wall above it. The gym had a large protective pad mounted high behind the basket. I had studied its measurements years ago because I studied everything. I threw the ball, not at the hoop, at the wall. It struck high above the backboard, rebounded across the court. I ran. My strides swallowed the hardwood. The ball descended near the free throw line. I jumped, caught it in the air, sailed over the hoop, then reached backward and slammed it down behind me. I landed near the baseline. For 1 second there was silence. Then the gym became chaos. Caleb ran toward me. "You practiced that?" "Not here." "Where?" "My court." "How many times?" "Enough." He shook his head. The same gym where people had once laughed when I missed simple shots was now too small for the shots I wanted to attempt. That was satisfying, but the real reason I had returned was waiting in the hallway. My old height mark. The wall had been repainted, but Lena had saved a photograph. 5'5". I could not enter the hallway normally anymore, so we recreated it outside. Lena had printed the old photo at full size and mounted it vertically on a panel. There I was. Small, straight posture, neutral face, pretending I did not care about a number. I stood beside the photograph. My old self reached somewhere below my current thigh. The visual hit harder than I expected. Not emotionally, Strategically, it told the entire story without explanation. Lena stood on a raised camera platform to film me. Even with the platform, she was far below my face. "What are you thinking?" she asked. "That he had terrible posture." She laughed. Then I looked at the old photograph again. I remembered every short joke, every casual dismissal, every time someone assumed Caleb was more important because he entered a room several inches higher. I had once promised myself I would enjoy the day they could no longer look down on me. That day had arrived months ago. I had discovered something better. It was not enough to become taller than people. You had to become too interesting to ignore. Height got attention. Cleverness kept it. That was the real climb. By afternoon, the school visit had become the biggest topic online. People assumed it was my anniversary event. It was not. Grant knew. He called me while I sat outside the studio. At 17 feet, even the studio had begun to feel temporary. "You went back to school." "Yes." "Very sentimental." "Not really. You dunked off a wall." "That part was sentimental." He laughed. "So that's it?" "No." "Good." He sounded relieved. Grant hated small endings. That made two of us. "Where?" he asked. I looked across the city, at the plaza, at the second-story balcony, at the route I had walked months earlier, everywhere. There was a pause. Then he understood. "You're moving." "Yes." "What do you need?" There it was. A year earlier, Grant had invited me into his park because he wanted to use my attention. Now he was asking what I needed. I did not point that out. I did not have to. "I need screens." Done. "Cameras." Done. "The high mobile platforms." "How many?" "All of them." He laughed. "Now we're talking." I had planned the anniversary as a moving event across the city. Not a parade. Not exactly. A replay. I would revisit the places where each stage of my growth had become public. The plaza, the basketball court, the grocery store, the outdoor challenge area, Grant's Park, then end where one of the first jokes had been made about me. A block of ordinary buildings with second-story windows. The route would show scale changing around me. Grant's giant screens would carry the feed. Lena would direct the cameras. Caleb would appear at the key stops. Dr. Owen would follow far enough behind to hate everything in real time. Simple. Ridiculous. Perfect. The event began before sunset. At the plaza, the old 12-foot measuring pole waited. Months earlier, I had held it above my head. Now it was shorter than I was. I picked it up, turned it vertically, then tucked it under one arm like a walking stick. The crowd roared. Lena's voice came through my earpiece. "Do not actually use the measuring equipment as a cane." "I wasn't going to. You were. I considered it. That's the same thing with you." I returned the pole. At the balcony, I did not reach up. I leaned my elbow on the railing. The second-floor crowd stood behind it, looking directly at my face. I took the same cup Lena had handed me months before. This time, she did not stand on the balcony. She stood on the ground. I reached down, took the cup from her, and held it up beside the railing. The scale reversal made the audience scream. Next stop, outdoor court. An adjustable hoop had been prepared. 10 feet. Too low. 14. Still too low. 16. I could dunk with a small jump. 18. Better. 20. The crowd grew louder. 22. Now we had a game. Caleb stood beneath it with his arms crossed. "That is not a basketball hoop." "It's a basketball hoop. That is a streetlight with a rim." I bounced the ball. "Move." He moved. Smart. I ran. Jumped. For the first time in months, a hoop forced me to reach. My hand cleared the rim. The dunk crashed through. I swung for a moment and dropped. The 22-foot hoop shook. Caleb stared upward, then at me. "Next year it's going to need an elevator. Next year you'll need a better vertical." He threw the ball at my leg. Next stop, the grocery store. The same aisle. The same top shelf. This time, the top shelf reached below my waist. I could not enter the store normally, so the production had opened a large service side and cleared a path. I walked to the cereal section, looked at the shelves, then sat down on the floor. Now my face was closer to the shelf height. I reached up and placed one box on the top shelf. Carefully, the audience outside watched on screens. I looked into Lena's camera. Finally, a challenge. She laughed. Caleb pushed a shopping cart beside me. The handle looked tiny. I put one finger on it. The cart rolled. "Do not break the cart," Lena said. "I know. Do not ride in the cart." I looked at it, then at her camera. I wasn't thinking that. You are now. I was. Unfortunately, even I understood some images were better left theoretical. We moved on. By the time we reached Grant's Park, the sky was dark. The fake volcano erupted as I entered. The robot dragon turned its head. The dinosaur from my first visit rolled onto the path. It had once looked large. Now its head barely reached my chest. Grant stood on the giant chair. He had elevated himself deliberately. Good. He had learned. The 22-foot robot waited behind him. That was still taller than me. Barely. Grant spread his arms. "Welcome back." I looked around. This place got smaller. It did not. Feels smaller. He pointed at the robot. Still taller. For now. The crowd made the appropriate noise. Grant smiled. Then he surprised me. He climbed down from the chair. No challenge. No trap. He simply walked over and stood beside me. The size difference was absurd. He looked up. 1 year. Almost. How tall exactly? I told him the number. He whistled. Then he looked toward the giant screens. A graph displayed our online viewership from the previous 12 months. His company, my channel, his events, my appearances. For most of the year, his network had been larger. Then the lines crossed. Mine had crossed his several weeks earlier. I had known. Of course I had known. He knew I knew. He had put it on the screen anyway. The crowd reacted when they understood. Grant looked at me. There. Happy? I considered pretending to be humble. Waste of time. Very. He laughed. That was the cleanest victory of the year. No trick. No physical advantage. No special camera angle. A year earlier, Grant had been the person who could make me larger by putting me on his screens. Now he put his own numbers on the screen to acknowledge I had passed him. Not in money. Not in companies. Not in every kind of influence. But in the thing he valued most. Attention. I had climbed above him without taking anything from him. I had simply become harder to look away from. That made the win better. Grant pointed at me. Don't get comfortable. I won't. I'm already planning next year. Good. What are you planning? I smiled. He groaned. Still doing that. Always. We left the park. The final location was deliberately ordinary. A block of low buildings, shops on the first floor, offices on the second. Nothing famous. Nothing dramatic. That was why I chose it. Early in my growth, someone online had joked that if I kept going, one day I would be tall enough to look into second-story windows. The comment had been repeated thousands of times. At the time, it sounded absurd. Now I walked down the sidewalk with second-story windows at eye level. People inside waved. I waved back. Some held signs. One simply pressed both hands to the glass in disbelief. I leaned toward a window. My reflection stared back. 17 feet of proof that linear change becomes ridiculous if you give it enough days. The mobile screens showed footage from the beginning of the year. 5'5", 6 feet, 7, 8, 10, 12, 15. Now, the crowd along the street watched past versions of me grow in sequence. Caleb stood on one platform, Lena on another, Grant near the main screen. Dr. Owen remained safely on the ground, where he could glare at me without climbing anything. The anniversary would officially hit at midnight. We had an hour left. The easy choice would have been another live growth measurement. We had already done that on New Year's. Repeating it would be lazy, so I had built one final challenge. Not Grant, me. A vertical obstacle tower, 24 feet tall. Constructed from wide platforms, bars, ledges, and angled surfaces. No dangerous gaps. No wild drop, just a giant climbing structure designed specifically around my body. At the top sat a simple bell. Caleb looked up at it. That's it? That's it. You're climbing a playground? For me, yes. Lena circled the structure with the camera. What makes this the final challenge? I looked at the tower. The dimensions change. She stopped, then smiled. She understood. The first section was built around my height from early in the year, 5 to 6 feet, small gaps, low bars, narrow platforms. For my current body, they were awkward. I had to crouch, turn sideways, Use fingertips. The second section scaled to 8 feet, easier. The third to 10, then 12, then 15. Each stage recreated the kind of space my body had occupied at that time. The higher I climbed, the more naturally the structure fit me. It was a physical timeline. At the bottom, I barely fit. At the top, it had been built for who I was now. That was the point. The climb began. First platform. I crouched almost to the ground and squeezed between low rails. The crowd laughed. I remembered doorways, small cars, normal showers. Second platform. I stepped through a frame sized for my 7-foot body. It reached only to my waist now. I lifted one leg over it. Third. A set of bars representing 9 feet. I had to crawl. The absurdity made the crowd louder. Fourth. 12-foot scale. Now I could move. I grabbed a rail, swung around the side, and stepped upward. Fifth. 15-foot scale. My body opened into full motion. Long reach, full stride, one pull, one step. Then the final wall, built for 17 feet. Tall, wide, a ledge near the top, the bell above. I backed up on the platform. Below me, the street looked far away. I could hear Dr. Owen shouting something about controlled movement. I ignored the exact words and remembered the useful part. Controlled. I ran 3 steps, jumped. My hands caught the ledge. I pulled. My body rose. I swung one leg onto the final platform. Stood. The crowd below exploded. I reached for the bell, then stopped. 11:59 p.m. Lena's camera zoomed in. The screen showed the clock. Grant looked upward. Caleb shouted from below. I stood beside the bell as the final seconds counted down. 10. 9. I looked across the rooftops. 8. The second-story windows were below me now. 7. For once I could see the top of Grant's giant screen. 6. I remembered Caleb's elbow on my shoulder. 5. The measuring wall. 4. The first centimeter. 3. The spreadsheet. 2. The number I had calculated a year ago. 1. Midnight. The world moved downward. 1 centimeter. Exactly. The first centimeter of my second year. I smiled. Then I rang the bell. The sound carried over the street. The crowd erupted. Lights shot upward from the platforms. Confetti launched from the ground. Not enough to bury anyone. Just enough to make Grant look annoyed that I had used more than he expected. I stood at the top of the tower and looked down. A year ago, I had imagined this moment as revenge. I thought I would feel satisfied because no one could look down on me anymore. I was wrong. That part had become boring months ago. What mattered was that I had taken something impossible, something I did not understand and could not control, and turned it into the most useful rule in my life. 1 centimeter. Every day. Not enough to change anything in one night. Enough to change everything over time. The crowd chanted my name. I let them. The giant screens replayed the year's biggest moments. Catching Caleb's shot. The moving car dunk. Dragging the dinosaur. The giant chair. The maze, the hide-and-seek statue, the wall climb, the 22-foot hoop, the second-story window. It looked like a highlight reel designed by someone who had completely lost respect for normal human scale. Accurate. I climbed down from the tower. Dr. Owen immediately checked my ankle. It was fine. He looked disappointed by my expression. Do not say it. Good news. He closed his eyes. I laughed. Caleb walked over. At my current size, he could stand under my arm without touching it. He looked up. So, 1 year. Yes, you know what this means. What? He pointed at the giant adjustable hoop in the distance. I need a taller gym. I smiled. Finally, you're thinking ahead. He punched my leg. It felt like a tap. Lena approached next. She had spent most of the day directing cameras, correcting timing, and preventing me from improvising myself into a wall. She looked exhausted. Happy. Suspicious. You're too calm. I won. At what? I looked around. Grant was talking to the production crew. Caleb was arguing with someone about whether the giant hoop could be moved. Dr. Owen was still checking my joints. Crowds filled the street below the second-floor windows that had once been a joke. Everything I wanted this year. She studied me. That's not an answer. It is. You wanted to be taller than everyone? At first. And now. I looked at the city. Roofs, signs, windows, things that had once been above eye level. Now I want to see what becomes possible before everyone else thinks of it. Lena smiled slightly. There it is. What? The scary answer. It's not scary. You're 17 feet tall and smiling at the skyline. That's because the skyline has poor defensive positioning. She laughed. Grant joined us. He held a tablet. On the screen was a photograph, a huge outdoor training field. At the center stood an adjustable structure. It looked like a basketball hoop, designed by a construction company. The rim height shown in the corner was 30 feet. I stared at it. Grant watched my face. Too much? No. Caleb leaned in. His eyes widened. Yes. I took the tablet. The structure could rise higher, much higher. Grant smiled. Thought you'd like that. When is it ready? Lena pointed at me. No, you just finished. I asked a question. That is how it starts. Grant laughed. Dr. Owen heard enough to become concerned from 20 feet away. Caleb took the tablet from me. 30 feet. Adrian, you can't dunk on 30 feet. I looked at the projected date in my head. Current height, future reach, strength, jump, training. 1 centimeter per day. He was right. I could not dunk on 30 feet, yet. I smiled. Caleb saw the expression and groaned. Here we go. The anniversary ended after midnight. Eventually the crowds thinned. The screen shut down. The giant tower went dark. I returned to my studio. The ceiling that had once seemed enormous now hung uncomfortably close above me. My giant chair looked smaller. The custom kitchen that had once made Lena feel tiny was already too low for me. On the wall, my height chart ended at the line I had marked for 1 year. I picked up a marker, reached higher, and added tomorrow's line. 1 centimeter above, then the next, a week, a month. I stopped before drawing too far. Not because I was afraid, because I did not need the wall to tell me what came next. I had the rule. Across the room, the old photograph from school leaned against a cabinet, 5'5". I walked over and picked it up between 2 fingers. The version of me in that picture looked almost unrelated to the person holding it. Same face, same eyes, same irritating confidence. Different altitude. I placed the photograph on the shelf. Then I looked toward the studio doors. They were 18 feet high. When I built them, that had seemed excessive. I had measured carefully, projected carefully, planned months ahead. Now I had less than a foot of clearance. I laughed. That was the problem with being good at planning. Sometimes reality kept extending the schedule. The next morning, I woke before sunrise. Technically, I had not grown while sleeping. I had grown at midnight, but the old phrase still felt natural. I stood. My head was 1 centimeter closer to the ceiling. Outside, the city was quiet. I opened the giant doors and stepped into the cool morning. A normal person walking nearby stopped and stared upward. I waved. They waved back. No screaming. No panic. Just recognition. That was new. A year earlier, being my size would have been unimaginable. Now people had adjusted. That interested me more than anything. Humans adapt quickly to ridiculous things if they happen slowly enough, 1 centimeter at a time. A few blocks away, I passed a building with a second-story office. Someone inside noticed me. They walked to the window. I looked directly across at them. No craning my neck. No reaching. Eye level. They laughed and waved. I kept walking. At an intersection, a bus stopped. Its roof sat far below my eyes. A year earlier, I would have looked tiny beside it. Now I could see the advertisements mounted on top. One of them showed my face. I stopped, looked at the advertisement, then looked down at the bus. The joke wrote itself. Lena would probably make me film it later. Good. The city ahead was full of rooftops I could not reach yet. Higher windows, bridges, signs. Structures Grant had not thought to build challenges around. Sports Caleb had not imagined adjusting. Medical questions Dr. Owen had not figured out. Camera angles Lena had not used. Possibilities. That was all I saw. I had spent the first part of my life resenting the people who stood above me. Then I grew past them. Then I learned something much more entertaining. Being higher was not the same as being ahead. Ahead meant seeing the move before everyone else. It meant knowing Caleb would take the extra dribble. Knowing Grant would build the obvious trap. Knowing Lena would discover the pattern. Knowing when to hide information and when revealing it would create more power than keeping it. The height was spectacular. The timing was mine. I stopped at a crosswalk. The pedestrian button was near my knee. I stared at it, then I crouched, pressed it with one finger and waited. Some problems did not become cooler when you were 17 feet tall. The signal changed. I stood, crossed the street in a few enormous steps. My phone buzzed. A message from Caleb. A photograph of the 30-foot hoop. Under it, a badly drawn picture of me missing the rim. I smiled. Another message arrived from Lena. A projection chart, my possible height 1 year from now. Nearly 30 feet. Under it, one sentence. We need a bigger studio. A third message came from Grant. A photograph of an enormous empty arena. No explanation. He did not need one. Then Dr. Owen sent a message reminding me that whatever I was planning, he wanted to examine the equipment first. 4 messages. 4 predictable reactions. I slipped the phone into a pocket large enough to hold a tablet. The sun rose between the buildings. For the first time, it hit my face over the roof of a low structure before it reached the sidewalk below. I stood there for a moment in the light. Then I started walking. Tomorrow, I would be 1 centimeter taller. A week from now, 7. A month from now, about a foot. No dramatic transformation. No explosion. No grand secret awakening. Just the same impossible rule continuing to do exactly what it had always done. That was enough. People had laughed when I was short. Then they laughed because I was growing. Then they doubted me. Then they challenged me. Then they copied me. Then they built things specifically because I existed. Now some of the same people who had once looked down on me were measuring future doorways based on where my head would be next month. I could live with that. Actually, I loved it. I looked toward a row of buildings in the distance. 3 stories, 4, 5, still above me. For now. I smiled. They had better enjoy the view while it lasted.